extraordinary day. 3 years ago, Bryan Kohberger left the Poconos for Washington State, where he had everything in front of him. He had gotten into a prestigious PhD program to study criminal justice. He could have had a life in law enforcement, enforcing the law against bad guys, and instead he chose to become one of them. And now, 3 years later, 4 innocent lives have been stolen by him as he ruined a fifth, his own, along the way. Extraordinary to watch him stand up and say, guilty. I did it. The actual guilty was said while seated, but we saw him stand at the beginning and over again. Just chilling. Did you murder Madison Mogen, a human being? Yes. Did you murder Kaylee Goncalves? Yes. And when they were doing the yes part of it, before they got to the guilty, when they were doing the yes, it was almost kind of snippy, the way they were going through it. Here it is. Let me just replay it, and then our panel will come back in. Watch.
Did you, on November 13th, 2022, enter the residence at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder?
Yes.
Did you, on November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, kill and murder Madison Mogen, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice of forethought?
Yes.
Did you, on or about that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Kaylee Goncalves, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice of forethought?
Yes.
And did you, on that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice of forethought?
Yes.
And then on or about November 13th, 2022, again in Latah County, Idaho, did you kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being?
Yes.
Did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice of forethought?
Yes.
Just awful. Yes, yes, yes. Like a student taking an oral exam and he's got all the answers and he can comfort himself at having them for the rest of his life as he rots in prison, which is a fate too good for Bryan Kohberger. Bringing back Matt Murphy and Howard Blum. Wow. Matt, I'll start with you on it. It's not your first rodeo seeing something like that. What did you make of what we just witnessed?
I'm kind of frustrated, actually. I sat on our death penalty special circumstance committee for 15 years in Orange County. And essentially what you do in a special circ murder like this, it's special circumstances murder, is you go through the law piece by piece and you weigh the aggravating versus mitigating circumstances. And you go through those very carefully. What are the factors in aggravation? What are the factors in mitigation? And from that, we would make a recommendation to the elected DA, who then makes a very somber decision whether or not to seek the death penalty or life without possibility of parole. We only sought death in over the course of those 15 years, less than 4% of the cases, Megyn. This case screams out for the death penalty. So my big question here is what changed? Because it's unethical to file a death enhancement or to seek the death penalty with the idea that you are extracting a plea. And I'm not saying this prosecutor did that, but when you hear the evidence, for me, listening to the fact that he got a K-bar on Amazon before he moved out, I think that's a new fact. I knew about the phones, I knew about the rest of it. This is an overwhelming case. So again, what changed other than him deciding, other than Kohberger asking to plead guilty, that changed the assessment that this was a death penalty case? And it is at the end, and I don't like to, being a prosecutor is a tough job. I acknowledge that. I did it for 26 years. So I'm reluctant to criticize, because it is a tough position. But if he choked up at the end, I think that we listened to the DA choke up at the end.
He did.
As he talked about that. It's like, dude, you gave this guy a break. And we didn't hear one single thing that changed in your assessment between the aggravating and the mitigating factors. We didn't hear anything. We didn't hear anything about a new story of abuse, some piece of evidence that wasn't going to be admitted. Nothing changed. And one of those families is irate. And you don't, it's like the old saying, there's no crying in baseball. There's no crying in when you're in the prosecution business and you're talking about the slaughter of 4 innocent kids when you're giving the defendant a break. The big winner today, I hate to say it, is Bryan Kohberger. And I was frustrated listening to that. And I got no problem calling him out. Unless there was something that changed behind the scenes that we didn't hear about today, I think that they should have proceeded with the death penalty.
Well said. Nothing changed, Howard. Nothing changed other than Bryan Kohberger's willingness to take the plea.
It is such a cynical decision on the part of the state to make this plea bargain. And during the course of the recitation by Thompson, he kept on saying things, so many things we don't know. He said, for whatever reason, we don't know exactly why he did this. The state, the evidence suggests. These are answers that we will never get, that the families, more importantly, will never get. I think they need to know this. It was a very dramatic moment and ultimately very disappointing moment. Even the state's decision to keep the gag order in place. They're trying to keep this quiet for as long as they can to get this over with and then move on. Move on. That's been from the beginning of this case. They were in a rush to tear down the house where the murders occurred. The judge himself, who took this case, Hippler, said, I'm not happy to be here. I wish I could say I was, but I'm not. Judge quickly got off of it. The original judge, the chief of police, retired as soon as he could. This is not a political cover-up, but it's sort of a benign neglect. Let's move on, let Idaho forget this. But the reality is the state, the town, the surviving families, they will never forget this. And I think they've been done a real injustice by the state.
Totally agree. They deserved the trial that they were promised, that they were entitled to. They deserved to see the witnesses take the stand and have the actual evidence, the overwhelming evidence presented against him so that there'd be zero doubt in anybody's mind. We deserved it. We deserved to see him sentenced to death. If the death penalty is not appropriate for Bryan Kohberger, who is it appropriate for? 4 innocents, 3 of whom were asleep in their beds with zero chance of even fighting back. He murdered them at the prime of their life with it all in front of them. Who's the death penalty for? Idaho has the death penalty. They believe in the death penalty because of that prosecutor who wants us to feel that he does empathize with the victim's family with that choking up at the very end part. It was in his hands, Matt. He could have said no. The only thing that changed, and I've been reading nonstop about it since we found out that there was a deal, the only thing that changed was the circumstances on the defense side. None of the proof. Ann Taylor's attempt to get the death penalty off the table failed. Ann Taylor's attempt, Howard and I have been talking about this for 2 years now, to get the DNA evidence thrown out because there was some, like, T's weren't perfectly crossed and I's weren't perfectly dotted in finding that hit in the DNA database. Her challenge to that failed. Ann Taylor's attempt at the last minute to bring in 4 other names as possible suspects failed when the judge said there's zero evidence those people did it. And in fact, DNA and fingerprint tests have been done on them and they have nothing to do with this case. Only when Ann Taylor realized she didn't have a shot at disproving anything, at really poking holes in the prosecution's case, did she go to them on Friday and say, make us an offer? And he did. And what you're saying is a prosecutor who knows he has a good case would 9 times out of 10 and has the right to say, I will not make you a deal. The deal is he can plead guilty and be subjected to the death penalty.
Yeah, not 9 times out of 10, Megyn. That's the only thing I've heard between you and Howard that I disagree with. It's 999 times out of 1,000 on a death case. The decision was already made. So why did we just go through all this? And I'll tell you another thing I take issue with. What's with the acknowledgement of there are many other houses in the area? The guy's pleading guilty. We know he was there to go check out Kings Road.
Well,
like,
it's clear why he's doing that. He's trying to imply, well, maybe I couldn't have won this case. Don't attack me because maybe my case wasn't that solid. He is going overboard to impugn his own case publicly so he won't be criticized.
Well, let me tell you another thing. Yeah, and another thing, and I look, when he says there was no component, I wrote this down, no sexual component or sexual assault. He doesn't know that. How do we know what Bryan Kohberger's intent was, which is exactly you're just talking about, Megyn? Why did he enter that house? And he was obsessed with Ted Bundy. We know about that from some of the information. Actually, I think I read about that from something that Howard wrote. We know that he was obsessed with Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy sexually abused every single one of his victims. So like Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? The great philosopher Mike Tyson. We don't know what Bryan Kohberger was thinking, but I can tell you this, the vast majority of serial killers, and I prosecuted 13 of these guys. I'm about to write a second book on serial killers. The vast majority of them, back in the 1880s, they were dubbed sadistic lust murderers. That's what they used to say. He doesn't know. This guy with his beard, does not know what Bryan Kohberger was thinking when he went in there, and he cannot say there was not a sexual component to it. And I'll tell you what, on behalf of sexual abuse victims everywhere, these victims can't speak for themselves. That was a slap in the face to people that have survived horrific things like this. He doesn't know. So maybe he meant to say there was no actual sexual assault, which is fine, but he spoke to his intent, and that I think was inappropriate.
Also was incorrect. I mean, you cannot go into a house, target a young woman, and without having a sexual element in some way being part of the motivation. And the thing is, we'll never know his real motivation. All these things that the Thompson said, he admitted for whatever reason, evidence suggests, we'll never get those answers. Also interesting, this is a major victory really for Ann Taylor. She accomplished what she could with the cards she was dealt. She kept her client from going before a firing squad. And yet, the only time there was, I thought, a moment of perhaps a disagreement when the judge asked her, did you get all the discovery you needed? And that's been a key part for her. She's been protesting that time after time. She filed 2 separate motions about not getting the discovery she needed. And yet here she paused, pregnantly, and then she conceded yes, just to appease the judge, I think.
Yeah, can I add something else, Megyn? Just having done so many of these, when you listen to that judge, that's a no-nonsense judge. I know Howard's got some criticism for him as a practicing lawyer. I can't offer any from what I just saw, but look, that judge would have taken care of business. He would have made the right rulings. He was sober. As a trial lawyer, that's the type of person that when you got the evidence, when you have a judicial officer like that who is smart and on the ball, like I think this judge very much is, that's the courtroom where you win your cases. So again, what has changed? I mean, you got a solid judge. You have overwhelming evidence. I've heard nothing whatsoever in mitigation offered at any point by the defense. This is a really good death penalty case, and they all get appealed. And you're going to face the highest level of appellate scrutiny through the Ninth Circuit, as death penalty cases should. But again, the decision was made. The family's geared up for it. I want to know what changed.
Since President Trump was sworn in, his administration has made enormous progress at a breakneck pace. But don't forget, while they are moving mountains for the good of the nation, you've got your personal savings to worry about. And one of the best ways to look after your savings is through diversification, particularly with gold, like from Birch Gold Group. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. And Birch was an advertiser on this show 12 months ago. If you had purchased then, you'd be 40% richer today. Now's the time. Central banks continue to bolster demand for gold by burying in record quantities. Global instability and tension is high, and Birch Gold makes owning physical gold so easy. Easily convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or buy some to store in your home safe. Just text MK to the number 989898, and Birch Gold is going to send you a free info kit on gold. Look into it, see if it's right for you. There's no obligation, just useful information to help you make a decision. With an A+ rating, with a Better Business Bureau, and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of your savings today. Text MK to 989898. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.